For today's video, we're going to be discussing the greater use and adoption of RPG-based design when it comes to video games. The good and kind of how it has become very exploitive in certain games. And why this has been used in many titles, including the very famous JRPG that was released earlier this year. I'm sure all of you have heard of it. Had a very fanciful story, weird characters, a confusing plot. I think it was called Call of Duty Modern Warfare. If the 2000s was a period known for kind of the more standardization or growth of the game industry, the 2010s was more about this adoption of RPG-based systems, aka throwing numbers into everything. And for this first part, I want to talk a little bit more about the good of the system and kind of the better implementations of it. So, traditionally when we look at video games, they are either of the action or abstraction point of view. So you either have very twitch, very technical based games, Devil May Cry, Mario, Call of Duty, etc., or you have the RPG more tactical or more thinking man's games. Your XCOMs, CRPGs, JRPGs, roguelikes, you name it. And those systems were kept very much apart for the longest of times. What changed over the past 10 years was this idea of adopting more RPG-based systems, as you can see with our example up there, Borderlands. And this idea served several purposes. First, from an approachability standpoint, it allowed more people to play these games. When we talk about action games in general, there is a skill ceiling that the game expects you to have, as well as a skill floor. If you're not good enough or you can't get good enough, you're done. There is no other way to get around it. There's no other systems or anything else you can do. By adopting RPG-based systems, it allows players who aren't as skilled to supplement their ability with the abstraction. So if I'm playing Dark Souls and I am doing a horrible time dodging, well, I'll just wear heavy armor. If I'm really good at dodging, I'll wear light armor. And it allows players, again, to kind of fine-tune their experience. And it also has a greater chance that everybody's going to be able to play through the game or at least get further than otherwise. And that supplementing of the ability is a very big point about this discussion. So, the other point is that by adopting RPG-based systems, it adds another layer of progression. And the allure of this kind of RPG grinding cannot be understated, with the sheer volume of free-to-play, mobile, gacha, and again, live service, games as a service kind of titles. Because like we said, there is an inherent skill ceiling for everybody. We can only get good so far. But numbers can go on forever. And you can keep extending this out with more gear and more levels and more, prestige systems. And speaking about prestige systems, that's one of the reasons that led to the longevity of Call of Duty. If Call of Duty did not have anywhere near the same levels of RPG progression, persistence, and that kind of meta layer, people will have gotten tired of it very quickly outside of the hardcore base. But that idea that I can keep playing this game, I just smacked my microphone there, that idea you can keep playing this game and grow in power and unlock new stuff, which gets you new prestige, which lets you get new kill streaks, so you can customize your guns, and then you can personalize your guns. The idea that there's always another level that you can go up is so powerful in terms of keeping people playing. And again, it is something MMO players have learned a decade before that with the MMO genre's growth of the 2000s. World of Warcraft, EVE, EverQuest, so many other games that I'm blanking on at the moment. So these systems are a major part of how things have changed in terms of playing these games. That it's not just a fire and forget, very static multiplayer or even single player experience. There is this growth, there is this level of progression that didn't really exist 15, 20 years plus. And that's why a lot of the multiplayer games that came out during like the mid to late 90s, early 2000s didn't really survive that much outside of the MMO genre, because they were very much that fire and forget. That idea that we're just going to put it all together, release it, we're done. That's it, no more new content. And I can think of several games that probably could have lasted several more years or even maybe a decade or so if that idea of a live service persistent model would have been added. If you want to look at really good case in point, there's of course Dead by Daylight, the multiplayer horror / cooperative competitive game. That game features a persistent element in terms of unlocking new perks, new abilities, new characters. And again, here's the beauty / nightmare of this design. It doesn't have to be big in order for it to matter. Some people will go nuts over plus 2% run speed, a 0.75 chance to crit. Now, of course, developers who know how this stuff works, they'll throw in very spiky and rare options. Again, the RPG genre is another very big example. How many people get excited when they get a weapon that gives them plus 2% attack damage? How many people get excited when they get that weapon that turns their sword into a laser beam and rains sharks down from above to kill their enemies? I know at least one person watching this who that would be very excited for. And this kind of longevity is good. It allows developers to support and maintain their games for years to come, and it allows more people to play these games, again, by supplementing skill. But after this quick break, we're going to talk about the downsides of this system and why it has led to manipulation and has hurt, I think, as many games as it probably could have helped, or maybe even more than that. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, link down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. In the last part, I talked about how these live service or RPG-based systems have done so much to cultivate people to play these games and the benefits that come with it. But it's time to talk about how they can be manipulated and exploiting people as well. The footage that you're seeing is from Marvel's The Avengers, and this was during the beta, but I'm pretty sure this is going to happen the same way in the main game. So I am playing this game on hard, or I think it was either the second hardest or the hardest difficulty. And what is going to happen is that I am fighting enemies who are, I think, 7-8 levels above Hulk, and what I guess is considered one of the strongest characters in all comic books is going to get his butt kicked because the robots are of a higher abstraction. And from now on, I'm going to call this phenomenon the Paper Hulk problem. And that is when the numbers or the abstraction at play are going to supersede or remove or downplay the player's skill at the game. And this is the issue when it comes to these kinds of RPG-based systems. Yes, they can supplement a player's skill, but when they get in the way of it is when we run into these issues. God of War 2018 had the same problem, Borderlands, and stuff like The Division as well. That it doesn't matter what I am doing in the game if the RPG abstraction is not on my side. And with this game with Marvel's The Avengers is just the latest example of this. Again, the Hulk is supposed to be one of the strongest characters in comic books, and I'll let comic book fans argue this in the comments below. But notice how long it's going to take me to fight these enemies, as Hulk does his mighty punches and is just barely breaking through their health bars. And this is where this manipulation of design comes in, because these kinds of systems become not only the more important factor, but they downplay the skill. We see this in any competitive, mobile, gacha, free-to-play game, whatever, that has player versus player in these abstracted systems. I can have the best team in the game. I can have my favorite character, so I can have my favorite gun. I am the best player. But if the abstraction is not on my side for whatever reason, most likely I am going to lose, or there is an inherent limit in how far I can play. I ran into this with Marvel's Contest of Champions. I guess Marvel really likes these kinds of systems, where unless you have higher star characters, there is a limit on how much power they can put out, how far they can go. And I watched a prominent streamer of this game went on a 7-day free-to-play challenge, and in those 7 days, he made several months worth of progress. Now, you may think that disproves my point, but it doesn't, because he said that the elements that he knew how to play this game, he knew what were the best content to do, the quickest way to level up, and he even said that if he didn't get this one particular character who's one of the best in the game, there would be no way he would be able to make this progress. And this is where this kind of RPG abstraction becomes manipulative. Because we see this in games that make use of rarity, gear scores, gachas, you name it. That at some point, the numbers are going to be against you. Some games make it very explicit, saying that, hey, you can't fight this enemy 6 levels above you or they will just one-shot you. Other games do it more implicitly. They're just going to have enemies be such highly tuned in terms of stats that it becomes a frustration to fight them, and even if you do fight them, you may not be able to beat them. I have played many games with these kinds of systems where I will just smash into an enemy, throwing projectiles, shots, fireballs, whatever. Enemy is barely taking any damage. They are just shrugging it off. They hit me once or twice, and I take almost half the full health bar damage, because the abstraction is not on my side. And like I said, this is where gacha, live service, mobile, you name it, kind of games excel in. Because these systems work. Again, I have to always say this. There is nothing stupid, lazy, poorly designed about these monetization systems. They are highly tuned and they are well-designed systems because they keep people retained. There is a reason why people are playing the latest Madden 2021 or NBA 2K21, whatever, and they're spending lots of money, and they're going to probably play this game for the next year or so because these systems work. The problem is that they work by being very manipulative. And we've said this before, that they're easy to design. I know how to trick somebody into spending money in these games. Any developer watching this who has worked on or is working on a free-to-play game knows how to do this. When we've had our conversations with Ramin, we've said this many times, that Ramin could be like the super villain of free-to-play monetization systems because he knows how to manipulate people. He knows how to get those dopamine levels up, and so do I. And this is what's so dangerous about these kinds of designs, and why they, while they are so effective, they're also very dangerous, not only to game design, but to consumer health as well. And I have yet to find one of these games that makes it work. When we played Ghost Recon Wildlands and they removed the RPG layer, it left the game in a pretty good state, but it also left it being soulless because the game was designed and balanced and structured around that gear rating. And it's why these systems are so, when they're integrated in, they become kind of the skeletal system of these kinds of designs. You can't remove it without breaking your entire game in the process. And you have to do more if you're trying to kind of course correct along those lines. With that said, to wrap things up, again, RPG-based systems, this kind of progression is very effective. It promotes long-term play, it keeps people invested. Like we've said, there are people who play games like Warframe, like the sports games, like the mobile and gacha titles, for years. Marvel Contest of Champions, I think, is going on like a 6 or 7 year anniversary at this point. They work. But when they manipulate players, when they downplay the player's own ability, is when we run into problems. It's why I do not spend any money on these kinds of games, because it's an endless chase. And that is always the case. That, as we've said, there is no such thing as a limit on numbers. What would be the most overpowered option in March could be, standard affair 2 months later, or even a few weeks later. That's how this design works. And like we've said, it works, but only for one side. And at some point we need to have Ramin on for another talk about all these lovely little tricks. With that said, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and can you find me a mobile gacha free-to-play game that does not feel manipulative in these practices? I would say maybe something like Gwent or Warframe may get close to it, but I have not played those titles long enough to get too far into those systems. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where examine the art and science of games, and not so much a look at Dad Bod Hulk on a day-to-day basis. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.